fourth judge who ruled over the Jewish people after the death of Joshua was a woman, the Prophetess Deborah. After the death of Ehud, the cycle of sin and judgment commenced again. The Israelites did evil in the sight of God, and so God handed them over to Jabin, a Canaanite king. Now, Jabin was cruelly dominant over Israel for 20 years. Sisera was the leader of his army. The Canaanites had a well-trained force with over 900 iron chariots. Now, those were the tanks of those days. The Canaanites dominated Israel. Their presence in Israel caused havoc. The highways were virtually deserted, no doubt heavily patrolled by the Canaanites with their chariots. Villages likewise were abandoned because they didn't have walls to protect the people from pillaging by the Canaanites. It was then that God sent Deborah, the prophetess. She was one of 7 women prophetess who were recorded in the Bible. Deborah lived in the mountains of Ephraim. In the midst of sin and idolatry, Deborah remained true to God, and the people flocked to her for advice and help. Deborah held court beneath a date palm tree in the open air. There, where everyone could hear, she warned the Jewish people and urged them to leave their evil ways and return to God. At a time when women took a subservient role, the entire Jewish nation respected this great prophetess. As we sometimes have roles based on gender, we must remember that God is no respecter of gender in who he calls. Deborah was the wife of a man called Lapidoth. She did not occupy an office in Jerusalem, but she sat under the date palm tree to show the world that the Jewish people all were unified in turning their eyes again to God. Like the leaves of the palm tree turned upward together towards heaven. It was fortunate that Deborah had such a tremendous influence, for even the strongest men of Israel in those days had given up hopes of turning the tide against the Canaanites' oppression and idolatry. When Deborah felt that she had helped the people to return to God, she sent for Barak. Barak was the most influential man in Israel. Deborah asked him to raise an army of 10,000 troops from the tribes of Naphtali and Zebulun. She instructed him to gather them at the foot of Mount Tabor in the plains of Esdraelon. With his army, he was to attack the Canaanite oppressor. Barak refused to undertake this task by himself. He well knew that only the help of God and the inspiration of the prophetess Deborah could make this mission that seemed hopeless against all odds succeed, to rise up against Sisera and his iron chariots. Deborah agreed to accompany him, but she warned him, if she went along, then the victory and the glory would go to a woman and not him. Courage and leadership can come from any source chosen by God. While we have our own stereotypes of what a leader should look like and act like and be like, God's ways are not our ways. He can use anyone he desires to carry his message.
It was not enough for him to die for us. He wanted that we love one another.
The fact that a woman joined with the army in those days assured that a victory would be ultimately attributable to God. We oftentimes have stereotypes, images of what our leaders should look like: tall, slender, handsome, male. We have these images of what our pastor, our deacons, our trustees, our ministers, our counselors, our teachers should look like and talk like and act like.
But when that document was completed on the 17th of September in 1787, I was not included in that we the people. I felt somehow for many years that George Washington and Alexander Hamilton just left me out by mistake.
As modern-day Christians, we do not know who will lead us, who God has put in our path to help us along the way to accomplish His mission for our lives. But we must not let our own stereotypes prevent us from accepting God's messenger. That's the lesson for this week, but let me stop and ask you for your prayers. I have to go before a special session of the Senate for confirmation in my new position as Revenue Secretary for North Carolina, and I will need your prayers with me on Tuesday. Thank you for your prayers for my son. We can certainly feel the power of prayer as he gets better. He's still got a long way to go, but with God, all things are possible. That's the lesson for this week. You have a great week. Bye.